To start off with, thank you very much for being with us. I am Thomas Schellen, the editor-at-large of Executive Magazine, and I'm honored to be your moderator today. Thinking about this session, F&B and destinations, hospitality, I suddenly got this morning at 6 a.m. a flashback by something like 57 years. That was when I was 4 years old. And my earliest known memory is traveling in a bus to Paris from my native Germany. And coming to Paris as a small child, I had some very lasting memories, and one of them was going to 2 restaurants. And funny enough, all through my life afterwards, I thought restaurants are places that are worth my time spending in as long as they have a certain level of quality and professionalism. And I cannot imagine right now how it would have been if I had been isolated by COVID pandemic lockdowns at the age of 4 and had not that chance of traveling to France and visiting many sites in Paris that made a lasting impression on me. So I thought about it in context of the importance of hospitality and the importance of S&B destinations and concepts. Now fast forward many generations and many vacations in France with many hospitality enterprise visits. I came to Lebanon in the 1990s. And at that time, there was, I was moved to the Ashrafiyya neighborhood, and there was a small place opening up just cross vis-a-vis from my living room window. I could look into their back office kitchen, and I couldn't see a thing, but I could see the light on at night. And I came to eat there about many times, maybe once a week, once a month, because it was just the most convenient place to take my kids and my family. It was one restaurant. This one restaurant turned into a chain, a Lebanon-made chain. And when I asked Wissam where did he eat the most in 2018, he, of course, named exactly that chain. I will not name it here, but the reality is that over the last 20 years for me, many restaurants concepts developed in Lebanon actually have grown in their identity tremendously. I remember one food concept research paper that I read around 99 and 98 that said hospitality-wise on the top of the industry, where it comes to the welcome by the proprietor, where it comes to the style of the owner, it's good. But as far as professionalism in the industry at that time, it was still very, very mediocre. Now, 20 years later, I believe the situation has changed a great deal. But that is what I want to ask you about. In our 3 rounds of communication today, we want to explore your view of the situation of F&B and hospitality in Lebanon, particularly also with the ability of job creation, quality job creation. I'm not as interested in the seasonal things as important as they may be in certain times, but really to develop the industry. And also in our second round in your vision, and in the third round in active projects that Yasser can put on the action plan. And Yasser will tell us now about the particularities of what we want to achieve.
Thank you, Tom. I'm going to be as brief as possible. So the ambition from our initiative is to go beyond roundtables and only producing content. which we have always done with as depth as possible. With this project, we're going to go a little bit beyond and try to find agreement on the top 3 or 4 or maybe 5 initiatives with clear outcomes and impacts and partners and budgets that can really make a difference for the 5 industries we're addressing. Specifically to your industry, of course, it is the most social industry, right? Technology played a big role in every other industry. Whether banking, finance, they can then be remotely and through apps and other solutions. While your industry is reliant on physical contact, is reliant on physical movement, which puts you at a specific risk that is beyond other industries. And of course, the attractiveness of Lebanon to tourism has been diminishing in the last few years, not only because of COVID. Pre-COVID, it has been impacted due to certain political and geopolitical lines that Lebanon has adopted. And of course, because of the purchasing power and the economic situation, which diminished the propensity of consumers to spend on restaurants. So the purpose of today's meeting is the first part of the meeting is try to validate, quantify, qualify the problem and its size of the problem and its importance for Lebanon. The second part of the meeting is try to brainstorm on what are the alternative solutions that will allow us to address the different issues, concerns, and challenges you are going through. And the last part is to distill the discussion and come up with a handful of initiatives that are realistically doable given the circumstances. The outcome, at least of our work, is a series of coverage and analysis that most probably will go back and reach out to you for further elaboration. And of course, a plan of action that hopefully we will be able to take forward and realize. So thank you again for your participation, and we'll let Mr. Shalin moderate and try to engage you the best way he can. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yasser. So I will jump between our physical and our virtual participants. And since there is a bit of a glare in my eyes from the screen and it's far away, I will appreciate if all of you just introduce yourself very briefly and speak again close into the microphone and tell me in 3 to 4 minutes about, or tell all of us about how you see the situation in the F&B concepts as far as exportable process and the situation in the hospitality industry in Lebanon today. Thank you.
Okay, first, thank you for inviting us here. I'm going to be very brief. My name is Maya Bekhazinoun. I'm here to represent the Syndicate of Restaurant Owners in Lebanon today. I'm also a co-partner of the Food Studio Management Company. We create and develop concepts around Lebanon and the region. I'm not going to go into the COVID era because this is something which we're going to finish from. So I'm going to talk a bit what happened before COVID and how I see things further from here. It's very important to note that the F&B business in Lebanon was at one point mainly sustaining on tourists or on Lebanese expats who would come to Lebanon to spend in Lebanon money. And people in Lebanon also, where a lot of people the spending power came also from families who used to send to their families money from outside in order to spend. So, and now we find ourselves without the tourists, because the first thing for tourists is safety and it's normal. So we find ourselves without tourists, we find ourselves with the Lebanese population with a very diminished purchasing power, and we'll talk about the other issues afterwards. I have a lot of ideas, we will talk about these later. Thank you.
Thank you. Our first participant from the panel, who would like to go first?
I can do that.
Okay, please.
So good afternoon, and thank you so much for having me on this panel. My name is George Argel. I'm the general manager for Seasons Hotel in Beirut, and I'm very happy to gain from your knowledge today and participate to this panel. Well, when it comes to describing the status of hospitality, I would say that we're going through challenging times, unprecedented times, let's put it this way, considering the impact of the blast of the 4th of August. Sadly, as you surely know, the majority of the hotels in downtown Beirut were impacted by the blast. And as we speak, I sit in a property that was severely damaged because of the explosion. However, personally, I remain hopeful. I'm hopeful by nature. And I think that, as we say in French, on ne peut pas baisser les bras. So we need to keep on fighting for the sake of the Lebanese community, for the sake of our children and descendants, and then for the sake of the city. Yes, as we speak, we're facing tremendous challenges, as Maya mentioned just now, because of the regressing demand on the destination, because of the impact on the destination's notoriety and reputation, and on top of that, the COVID dynamics with the extreme restrictions on travel. However, I think that with having all efforts joined and channeled toward working together once again to promote the destination, to restore what has been damaged, and bring back the city to life, I'm confident. I'm confident simply because of the people on this panel and many others similar to us, that they do business full of passion and with a lot of creativity. So I would say I would remain hopeful on the situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry.
Hi, and thank you. My name is Aif Saadi. I own a Japanese restaurant, and I'm a consultant and supplier to 12 countries. I'm a part of the syndicate too. Me and Maya, we are board members in the syndicate. We represent all the industry, which is restaurant, cafe, nightclubs, and bars, and pastries in Lebanon. As you know, and we all know, Lebanon is very unique in the area. It's a part between link between Middle East, Africa, and the Gulf. And we've been there for a long, long time. So our experience in Lebanon has been for a long time unique in the area. During the war, everything was frozen. Still, with the advantages that Lebanon has, we survived during the whole war. And you said that you came, Mr. Thomas, to Lebanon, and you had a place in Ashafiyah that you used to go to. And after 20 years, it's a chain and still surviving. That's because Lebanese, they have a culture, and they are very smart businessmen, and they had the initiative to start business and pick up again soon. Our problem now in the industry, and we as syndicate, we are always focusing and trying to find solution. I think the problem started during the war. We picked up after the war. Now our problem started like 8-9 years before due to the banking and to the industry and political conflicts that we have. So what we have now during the COVID and during the demonstrations is not something that just started there. It started like 8-9 years before in the industry, and the political conflict caused more damage. Picking up now, I think it needs a lot of work. And the Lebanese have to focus more on the country after our political conflicts is finished.
Thank you. Anthony is there? Mr. Malouf?
Yes, thank you, Thomas, for having me here. My name is Anthony Malouf. I've been in the industry for the past 25 years. Our group of concepts under End Ventures are Casper and Gambini's, Beverage, Caspresso Cafe. It's a combination of different kinds of F&B offerings that started in Lebanon back in '96. And we've been focusing mainly on franchising and exporting our business abroad. And when we're talking about the current problems that we're facing in Lebanon in particular, I believe one of the added value in franchising is being able to offset the political situation that affected the currency devaluation that all of us are facing currently, be it with the cost of products, both or maintaining a good, healthy working force in terms of being able to support with the salaries after the currency devaluation. So besides the problems we faced in COVID in the region amongst all countries, as soon as this pandemic ends, we believe being under the umbrella of franchising will be able to help support and overcome the situation that we're facing in Lebanon.
Thank you. And I may say that back then in '97, I was joining a broadsheet in Beirut called at the time the Beirut Times, and our office was in the middle of Ashrafiyah, and suddenly we were starting to order more and more lunches from a little place that was sitting about 5 blocks away, and suddenly this little place became another chain. And thank you for building Casper and Gambini for us. But this is just my personal taste. Yumana, you are the resident expert in coverage of the hospitality industry, I may say. And I would really appreciate what you will tell us, how you see the situation as at the end of a long drought brought on by the usual suspects we know: economic recession, political quagmire, and global pandemic. Please unmute yourself.
Yes, hello. Thank you, Thomas, for the introduction. Well, you said it, it's quite complicated. We have to face global disruption due to COVID-19, and we're facing, the country is facing, I think, the most challenging times we ever had in our history. Obviously, through franchising, this will allow us to offset the challenges the country is bringing, but it's a very critical situation we are all going through as hospitality. We've been, as you probably know, we've been running a series of talks. Today after 4 o'clock, we'll have our 8th talk, and it's quite breathtaking. I mean, it's really, how can I say, it's really very heartbreaking to see how difficult and how many challenges we all have to face. But as George said, we are, I think there's something about us as people that makes the whole situation different. We react, we are proactive people. And if you will go through all of us, through each and every one of us, you'll see we're all creating new solutions. I'm into events, honestly. Events have been totally devastated, have been totally disappeared from the equation at this time. We've been suffering as event organizers for the last year, and we had to reinvent ourselves totally. So I think on a global level, as Maya said, COVID is at the end. Our challenge is more on Lebanon. How are we going to be able to find solutions? And how are we going to be able to be back on our feet the fastest possible. And I'm looking forward for this debate too. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you so much. Now I think I turn to the empty chair, but it is a virtual chair, so Roman is with us fully, and we will not put the camera there. We put the camera on Roman. Please give us your take as a management expert, as a finance expert, and as someone with passion for development of Lebanon, how we can activate the hospitality and F&B. What kind of things will you look at or look for in projects that are proposed to you? What will whet your appetite to invest? What could be done to make us better able to meet your criteria? I confess I have been told Roman is here. So are you hearing us, Roman? We jump to anybody else who hears us from the panel, from the virtual present. If you want to comment and have not yet spoken. Not yet. George, you want to tell us your impression first, why hospitality and F&B is a promising industry in Lebanon? I have to threaten you. I start to sing if we don't get... Oh. Okay, then we will not execute that threat. We will go back to the present in the room. Thank you so much. Now, one thing that I struggled with as getting stories into executive, and especially stories with numbers of closures of food outlets in 2019, 2020. These numbers were scary, but on the other hand, I still see food outlets and F&B initiatives starting, and I see they are surviving even with difficulty, I'm sure. So how is your outlook for the sustainability of this industry, the diversity of offerings? I mean, at some point we discovered that there are more sushi places in Lebanon than there are maybe sushi places in Chicago or yes, but anyway, in a way, yes. I mean, if you take the right metric, yes. But no, how is the sustainability of the diversity of food places in Lebanon, and how is the potential or the sustainability of this industry right now in terms of financial survival for you?
If we want to take, for example, the small and medium-sized enterprises, these are, I think, the least affected now because they have reduced costs, and it's easy for them to reduce costs in terms of payrolls, in terms of everything else they have on overheads. As for the bigger chains, most of them have let's say branches outside of Lebanon, and these branches, hopefully, after the pandemic issue is solved, these chains would have some incoming funds from the outside. Also, a lot of existing medium-sized enterprises have moved outside. For example, this morning, there was an article in Orient Le Jour, precisely talking about the people who moved to Greece, to other places. And we see a lot of people still continuing to leave. And here, when we say restaurants, we are talking brands, we're talking about experts, chefs, waiters, entrepreneurs, business people. As for the rest whom I have not tackled, I think they will have to try and survive by changing a bit on their menu, offering, because a lot of items today have become extremely expensive for us to offer to the client. We have to work a lot on finding local products, locally produced items, and this is something that would really help the whole economic, if you want, chain supply for the food and beverage industry. A few years ago, we were very active in trying to launch Lebanese gastro diplomacy outside of Lebanon. And this was done in order to promote Lebanese food and promote Lebanese ingredients as well. So we were helping also Lebanese industries to sell products outside of Lebanon. In terms of sustainability, I think if we can try and really reduce on the menu offering, try to reduce on costs until the political, economical issue is better, and this is where we'd be able to promote tourism, that would be really a great thing to do.
Our problem now is a bit more with the problem that COVID-19. We had, as we say, we had the problem started like 8-9 years before. To survive now, it's not easy at all to do it, especially that with the exchange rate that we have in Lebanon, surviving with the cost of food is almost impossible. Having the stuff that we used to have before, another problem. The only way to survive, from my point of view, is to try to expand our business and to reach different countries and franchise some of our concepts. We know Lebanese are very smart. They have a lot of connections around the world, moving to different areas like now they are doing in Africa, Middle East, and some part of the Gulf, is something that might assist us to recover and to survive soon. We're moving our staff Lebanese to some other branches around the world, and because trying to focus on Lebanese market with what we have and with the problem that we have will be impossible for any industry to survive. It's impossible to make a break even unless you move abroad and you have some income with the fresh dollars that we're receiving here in order to survive. Because I think we have something like less than 10% of the industries, they are still in business. Most of them are counting on the delivery business, which has picked up, especially since last September until now. Otherwise, I would have said that there won't be even 5% of the industry surviving.
So, of course, restaurant and food concepts, you're telling me, if I understood you correctly, that the growth into new markets can be the salvation of this industry in Lebanon, and that expanding outside is something that is the strongest prospect right now. And when I read my news also, I didn't see the story this morning, but when I read about some concepts from Tripoli or from Hamra, known places locally suddenly say, oh, we are going to Kuwait or we are going to Africa or wherever. There is this kind of trend, but on the other hand, the hotel business seems to be not in the same position. Either you are with a chain that is already present globally or regionally at least, or you are with a local outfit and acquiring the either the management contracts or branding something outside will be a much longer term need and proposition. Is that a correct view, George, or would we say that you have any potential to grow the hotel industry outside of Lebanon from a Lebanese base?
Well, to start with, I envy my colleagues on the panel, because with food and beverage, they can broaden their scopes and try and develop their concepts overseas or abroad, and then support the local business. So to sustain, with me, I need to actually adopt different approaches when it comes to, managing the current situation. if I tackle the current scenario, whereas I need to restore the property, we need to restore the property, and we look into the amounts we need to inject, so to restore a 5-star world-class property, such as Four Seasons, the amount of money that we need to inject, so to restore the property as per Four Seasons design integrity standards, which are quite tight, it is not, I would say, the most optimal business model, because you will never manage to secure a return on investment considering the fluctuation and the devaluation of the local currency, which is deemed at 780% today, if we look into the black market rate. But to approach it in more of a, I would say, a hopeful way, we need to face the crisis. Now that we're going through troubled water, we need to look into restoring our business as a property, make sure that this property regains its glory once again in terms of offering, in terms of quality, and be in a position to welcome guests. And then once we reopen, the reopening is kind of critical from many perspectives. The first one would be attracting the right talents. You know that our business, all of us, is built around talents, and then the pool of talent is shrinking as we speak. And then we might face a situation where a scarcity of talents would prevail on the local market. So we need to look into identify the local talents, nurture the talent that we have in town, and then bring them to a point where they can still deliver quality, so to make sure that this destination remains on the touristic map. And in parallel, try to build our business model around self-efficiency, so not to go to owners every now and then asking them for capital injection so we remain operational. On the hope of witnessing better days, I would say, on the long run, and then we start witnessing more demand, the devaluation would balance at a certain stage, and then we start building a profitable business model on the midterm. It is complicated. We need to redesign our approaches into doing business, but eventually things cannot stay as such. We are going, as I've mentioned, into troubled waters, but with one day or the other, it has to bounce back. When it comes to COVID, and then if we look into, tackling hospitality from the pandemic perspective, we've witnessed a lot of adaptability during the past period, whereas hotel companies developed and implemented thorough initiatives to secure safe and clean facilities for guests and colleagues alike, so to restore kind of a confidence. One of those was the partnership of Four Seasons, as a piece of example, with Johns Hopkins Medical Institute, so to develop the initiative of Lead with Care. I believe that such measures softened the impact of the pandemic, and we started witnessing some bounce back in sister hotels around the world, such as the Seychelles, Dubai, mainland China, where authorities actually, they eased the travel restriction. I think on the longer run, the vaccination process would eventually support overcoming the pandemic with gradual betterment toward normality. This is actually at least my thoughts on this.
Thank you so much. When I listen and try to hear the subwaves of your communication, I feel that really reinventing the entire hospitality business is a very noble challenge for us. Honest, if I speak as an economic journalist talking about F&B concepts in Lebanon, as you mentioned, for many years depending on expatriate money and on remittance money and on consumption, I thought some of that money might have been better spent by going into productive real economy investments, at least on the macroeconomic balance. So maybe getting to a better macroeconomic and microeconomic constellation of the hospitality sector in Lebanon, which historically, at least according to my knowledge, has been very seasonal, very much dependent on a certain high influx, high spending clientele, and not actually being able to expand into developing all the destinations at all levels that Lebanon could offer. We are talking from rural to cultural, to religious, to social, anything, I still feel that this country has potentials that historically have not been optimized in that. But Roman, if you are now with us, I hope. Roman? Not online. Okay. So who is still, then I go again to Jumana. Please tell us, how is, from your experience, the hospitality event market in the region right now compared to the event market in Lebanon, the conferences, the consulting, and all the infrastructure and ancillary side of the hospitality and F&B business?
Well, I mean, for the last year, there wasn't any events. None in the whole region, none in the whole world. So it's kind of, it's an industry that is totally on pause for the last year. We were able to reinvent ourselves in organizing virtual events like this one, tailored events, webinars, talks specific to our clients and partners. And if I want to talk in the world what's happening, there was one major event who took place, which was last month in Dubai, and which is Gulf Food. I was there because I was curious to see how would this happen. And it happened. There was plenty of people. It was very interesting. Obviously, it was not working it was not business as usual, but it was a new way of doing business. And there was very strict rules, hygienic rules, and ways to manage COVID. So it was really well done. What's coming up now in terms of events, all the countries are still closed. Kuwait is totally closed, Lebanon is closed, Bahrain too, Qatar, there is a new event coming up next month. Dubai is opening slowly. Saudi Arabia is still closed, although we have an event, an Orica event planned in September, but we still don't know if it's going to be opened at that time. The whole event industry is still on standby, but in Dubai. Even in Europe, there are no events taking place. So basically, it's only online events. To the best, it's hybrid events. But I mean, we're still waiting for the markets to open and for the countries to open so that we are able to organize events in real life. Real events.
Okay, thank you. So we feel with you that this is something we are still in a state of waiting for maximizing and starting new, actually, where we can take this industry, where this industry can move forward. This is not just a Lebanon issue, but it's a far more regional issue, if I see that correctly.
Absolutely. So we need to reinvent ourselves for the moment online, so that whenever the countries, I mean, it's a COVID issue. It's not a Lebanon issue. We're talking in terms of events. For the rest, I mean, yes.
Thank you. Now, Anthony, if we are moving to thinking about not business as usual, then we have to think business unusual. And of course, in business models right now, from delivery to delivery of boxes where people can cook at home, or dispatching a cook that actually prepares a lavish dinner on a gourmand size and in a private event, or taking catering into something totally beyond what catering used to be. How many of these kind of things could be done by Lebanese companies, and how could this be leveraged into a new industry culture that transcends just one or two F&B specialists, but actually permeates a whole industry that we have with the many small SME enterprises, which are mom and pop stores by another name that exist in this sector in Lebanon?
Yes, Thomas, as you mentioned, delivery has witnessed a growth of up to 50% in our business since the pandemic started, especially in Lebanon and in all the countries we're in. Unfortunately, from a business point of view, the cost of delivering and with what we're facing in Lebanon in terms of currency devaluation, in terms of packaging, printing, etc., the business model is not viable and doesn't provide any comfort as a financial solution to the business. However, this is something we all have to do, and it will keep on building the brand, and it's basically a survival mode that gives a small light at the end of the tunnel for businesses to continue. One thing I'd like to mention is for small SMEs, the cloud kitchen, we've witnessed in this past year a growth and big interest in the cloud kitchen idea, especially in the Middle East. This business model does not exist yet in Lebanon. We're thinking of maybe launching something like that, because that will help and target what you mentioned, the small individual stores that would like to expand without having major investments in setting up a big delivery kitchen or a production kitchen as well.
Thank you. Since I don't see the list of, well, I see the list, but I'm not sure how many of you are online. Is George or Borhat, do you want to contribute anything to the first round? Borhat. Then I would invite Alexei to give us the journalist's take on the first round of discussion. Alexei is our new managing editor at Executive Magazine.
So hello everyone, thank you for being here. We are all aware of the extreme stress and pressure you have been on for the past year in your sector. There's nothing to add to what you've said, but from a personal point of view, I'd like to point out two things. There's a lot of talk about redefining the sector, and redefining is very ambitious, as we know. I think it's important to make a distinction between redefining and adapting and reacting, because so far we are still in survival mode. Yes, we have moved from dining in to delivering. This is not really a redefinition. This is a temporary strategy to keep safe distance and avoid contamination. When we talk about redefining the sector, it's really bigger than that. It's, as Thomas pointed out, it's having chefs hiring chefs to cook at your place. It's you also mentioned, for example, focusing on Lebanese products and Lebanese sourced products, because we cannot afford anymore the imported products. That is still reactive. Maybe redefining this would be like exploring new foods altogether. There's been talk about insects as food for the past few years. It hasn't really been explored, but maybe this is where we're going. The other thing that's important to keep in mind is that nobody expected COVID-19. It took everybody by surprise. Yes, it is ending. Yes, we are getting vaccines, but who is to say there will not be COVID 2021? or COVID 2022 or another disease. We have been lucky as a species so far to survive SARS, MERS, and COVID, basically. But does it mean another pandemic will not paralyze us the way COVID-19 paralyzed us this year? One more point I'd like to say is, in terms of pandemic, we have to think the bigger picture. But in terms of the local problems we are experiencing, lack of capital, lack of access to imported goods, yes, I think like you that this will end eventually. It cannot persist this way. But how long can we survive? You talked about cutting costs, and it's easier for SMEs to cut costs and survive. But eventually cutting costs is also contributing to the drainage of skilled workers, of chefs, of concepts. Even if we think in terms of exporting these concepts, it is still a reactive strategy. So that's my 2 cents on the issue, I think, which would be very interesting to explore in terms of actual redefinition of the sector and solutions later on. Thank you.
Sorry, in the second round, I want you to think and vocalize 3 things. Number 1, what is your most daring, out of the world, super optimistic vision? Because I have heard too much of reality for the last hour. The second is, what do you see as the most doable expansion in terms of developing the supply chain in Lebanon? And the third question is, how much do we need public sector to function in order to be able to have the F&B sector survive and the hospitality sector recover? These 3 questions, but first you had a comment.
Yes, Alexei, that's for you. We shouldn't forget that we've been on a survival mode the last 2 years. So it's the normal thing to be reactive and try to really survive. If I may start with your questions, one thing, maybe the only advantage for the devaluation of the Lebanese currency today is that it makes out of Lebanon a cheap destination. So anyone who wants to go on tourism would find out of Lebanon today one of the cheapest destinations. And this is one thing that maybe we can work on or advertise. And this is where we can highlight on the rural tourism, religious tourism, food trails, wine picking, ingredients. We have a lot of villages where ingredients are prepared like as the mouni, and this is also something which is very exportable. This is something we should work on, I think, and media here has a double-edged sword, because as much as we can propagate the nice and beautiful nature of Lebanon and the nice and beautiful cultural heritage and wealth we have, we are also propagating all the ugly things we have. I'm not saying we should hide the ugly things, and this is something which is really coming from the emotions of people who are describing their daily reality. But in terms of F&B, it would really help us a lot to show the good things in Lebanon. The cloud kitchens, which Anthony mentioned, is really a very, very interesting alternative for small enterprises, just at least to keep the brand ongoing in order to survive. Again, I'm saying survive this period, and until we can find not only alternative ingredients, but alternative ways in order to import our ingredients at better costs. So this is my second issue. Supply chain, yes, and I think it's high time we as restaurateurs or in the F&B sector, we meet the people, with the agricultural people or with the industrialists, in order for us to tell them what are our needs, essentially, and for them to tell us what they can provide us. Because there's a little gap here. We've never met with these groups, and we have demands, and they have products, and I think it would be great to put us together to find the suitable solutions.
George, from the perspective of a large hotel, what kind of benefits could it bring if we more, again, propagate cheap tourism to Lebanon as an attraction, or if we would say rural tourism and grape picking or walking the hills in a car will make you a better person? Could that be something that a large hotel in the center of the Beirut Hotel District could actually benefit from?
Well, allow me at first to mention that I would love to actually propose Beirut as an accessible destination. We're not a cheap destination. We are so proud of Lebanon. We are so proud of the people of Lebanon, and we will never be cheap. We are full of heritage. We are full of, I would say, history, and then full of knowledge. And then even promoting Beirut as an accessible destination, this would bounce back eventually with time, because we're going to economic collapse. That would eventually balance in some time when the demand will be here. I would personally look into channeling efforts. We Lebanese, if we look into the Gear-Hofstede model of societies, we're very individualistic by our approach. And I think that we need to channel all our efforts as one voice. We need to regroup and then start exercising some lobbying positively in a way, whereas, such as this panel, we keep on promoting, because of the freedom of speech, the negative side of Lebanon, while we have so many positive sides. And sadly, if you go into the region, I'm always saddened to see that Dubai is fully packed, but you go there, it's glorious, it's magnificent. I wish them all the success of the world, because they're the pride of the Arab countries. But when you come back to Beirut, there are so many beautiful destinations by nature, because of the nature, but not only because of the nature, because of the people. We are people, they love to converse with us, they love to frequent us, and then they love the Lebanese mode of life, which is kind of Middle Eastern, with the habits of the Middle Easterns, still with the European and Occidental approach. So how I think exercising some lobbying on media, because when you watch the media, yes, people there, as Maya said, they're trying to express their concerns, their sadness, but sometimes I feel like we're amplifying things to the point that we're shooting ourselves in the foot. Honestly speaking, it's too sad. On another note, I'm not here calling for a revolution, but yes, we all do live the consequences of the dramatic explosion. But probably we need to look as well into exercising some lobbying, so they issue this technical report, the technical investigation report. By issuing this, I think that there will be a couple of $1 billion pumped into the economy, and then this would support us rebuilding our organizations, putting more momentum into the economy, and then slowly and gradually bouncing back. I think that we need to, I'm very proud to be on this panel, and to be honest with you, I'm proud of all people from this panel. I've learned from the best. Those are brilliant people. I used to love to go to Casper and Gambini's and eat his beautiful Philly steak. I used to really love conversing with Maya. I love Shogun. So those are brilliant people that we're talking with now. But I think our main problem is that we're adopting this individual approach rather than channeling our efforts as one voice and trying to put pressure so that they look into the situation, because this country has been built around services. By the time we manage to get the gas and then sort the solutions on the regional level, we will be starving or probably dead. I think we need to channel our efforts and try to revive this sector that has been all the way the pride. If you go to any part of the world, mainly at least in the Middle Eastern side part, you see that the most beautiful destinations are made by Lebanese people. So why don't we look into really regrouping, exercising some lobbying, and channeling our efforts in more of a, I would say, not I would say holistic, but as a one voice. Let's put it this way. Let not be always individualistic in our approach.
I think I hear two very clear calls for developing synergies, both within the supply chain and with the adjacent sectors, and also with the media. Now, forgive me, I will differ with the view that we have built this country on services, but Lebanon for me is actually a very complex economic map. The complexity index is higher here, so the ability to micromanage service inputs and agro-food inputs into the F&B chain is something that I humbly think and recommend to expand upon. But certainly the point of view, and executive will not be against you in that, that sensationalism in the media presentations of of the Lebanese potential and the Lebanese economic potential is not our thing at executive. So how can we help Yasser to make a better, more balanced picture on this industry?
I mean, we need to look at how this disruption has impacted us. Lebanon has always been the country where we validate concepts. Young people, or maybe or less young people, will also, as entrepreneurs, would always venture into new concepts. And there was quite a turnover on these concepts. A lot of them succeeded. A lot of them grew in Lebanon and outside of Lebanon. Right? And we can name many. And this is the biggest disruption. First, Lebanon being this entrepreneurial hub where young people or concept developers would have the courage to go and launch their concepts out of Lebanon, refine them through user experience or consumer experience. And once they reach a certain maturity within the local market, it was time and a guarantee for success outside of Lebanon, because the Lebanese consumer is sophisticated enough for them to take, to crash test, if you want, these concepts. That's why somehow, if you succeed in Lebanon, you can succeed anywhere else in the region. And so this is the first disruption. So how do we make sure that these young entrepreneurs can still be incentivized to launch these concepts out of Lebanon? Does the consumer have the purchasing power to take these concepts for a test ride, if you want? So this is the second question we want to ask. Innovation, because also the Lebanese restaurateur has also been innovative, not only in the recipes, but also in the systems that they are using, and even innovative in the legal frameworks they use in order to export these concepts. So franchising, I don't know who else in the region is franchising their concepts other than Lebanon. Is Jordan franchising their concepts? Is Tunisia franchising their concepts? Lebanon is the only country that claims that positioning, and this is, I think, the biggest loss. And this turnover is very healthy for economies. Even if you say 70% of concepts close within 30 years, so what? This is healthy because it refines and it adds value, and definitely contributes to the multiplier effect in the economy. So how do we make sure that there is liquidity and there is investment in this entrepreneurial spirit? And two, how do we make sure that these concepts are able to retain value and grow value through time, through, of course, entering new markets around the region or around the world. I think these are the main conflicts we have to really, from a business perspective, we have to think of. But did the government ever have any initiative in supporting the hospitality industry? I think they did everything to destroy the hospitality industry. It's a statement. And in my opinion, they did everything to destroy it, especially when they ruined our relationship with every possible tourist that could step a foot and bring fresh dollars or fresh customers to your venture. So I think this is the cycle of any corporate enterprise in Lebanon, from entrepreneurship to concept creation to access to capital, to the turnover, to, of course, to be able to retain value, grow value, and expand around the world. You know, so how can we somehow, in each part of this life cycle, what can today, what can we put at the table, or what could the international community or the financial industry contribute in order to make sure that this cycle continues? So this is, in my head, this is the concern, you know, more than anything else.
And am I wrong in thinking that executive for the last 20 years has tried to present Lebanese hospitality and F&B in a realistic light?
I mean, executive, we cannot position it in that manner because our editorial line is different. As a publication that has been defending liberty of free enterprise, we have always been defending entrepreneurship, you know, and we have allowed, or everybody around the table has been in the magazine at some point. We have allowed executive to be the platform where entrepreneurs from all industries can voice their concerns, you know, in a very authoritative way, with the purpose of advocacy, and of course to influence decision making and public opinion. You know, are we in the business? And this is our business model. You know, is this good or bad? I think it was good, and we'll continue doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. As a journalist on this, I may voice my opinion that the colleagues who think in dissing the sector or dissing Lebanon is something that they want to do. It's mostly dissing by convenience. They are not out because they hate Lebanon. They are just thinking that they are taking the easy road, which is it's always faster to criticize than to be constructive and propose a solution. And somehow the media industry is very safely, historically settled in this behavior pattern. I think from our engagement with entrepreneurship, I would think maybe we, as a magazine, are more interested in creative destruction, which is the way forward from the capitalist perspective, but we don't want destructive creationism. We don't want to destroy just for the sake of creating something new. There is a natural renewal process, and Lebanon seems to, at least in the hospitality business, seems to be at a time right now, at a moment right now, at an inflection point where it is perhaps still early because the conditions are still COVID impaired, but where it is necessary to move into planning and move into synergy development, things that have been missing. But Aref, since you are probably the youngest in the room, I want to ask, what is your most daring vision for, I mean, the young people are daring and want to be gung-ho, so what is your most daring vision as a hospitality entrepreneur in Beirut?
Thank you for the compliment. I think the only time we smiled is when Yasser mentioned the contribution of our government to the industry. And that was the most beautiful sentence I heard since long time. Okay, to start first, a lot of experts, they count that these days are like the World War III. So it hits the world. Unconsciously, everybody is going crazy. They lost their mind. They don't know what to do and how to pick up. Our problem started, as we said, long time before. Surviving this will be a miracle for Lebanese. If we survive, especially our industry, if we survive, it will be a big challenge. And hopefully it will be over 10% of the people can survive this problem. The only way we said it is like Anthony said, that they started franchise outside Lebanon. A lot of Lebanese, they franchised a few years before, but everybody now is focusing now to recover, and the only way to do it is to cut down our expenses, as Maya mentioned before, and to franchise abroad. Lebanese richness in the industry comes to the mentality, the personality of the Lebanese. They are expert in communicating with foreigners. They don't know how to do it. Franchising is not a concept only. It's a concept, operation, and it's a follow-up. Lebanese, they have this. You have mentioned that in the area here, there are not a lot of countries who are contributing to the franchise of for their countries, and mostly it comes because of the personality of the Lebanese. They know how to follow up. They've been during the World War, the 75 war, they went abroad to the Middle East and they worked everywhere, and it's proven that Lebanese can do that. They are very good in communicating. Going to the industry, to the volume industry of bringing more volume of tourists is almost impossible in Lebanon. Lebanon is one-on-one service. It's a personal touch that's been taught. If you bring groups like you used to bring in Cyprus or in different countries, it wouldn't work. We are not built for that. We're built for small services, special hotels, special restaurants, special industries that we have. Picking up is, as we said, it should be cutting down and changing a little bit to diverse the concept to delivery, to cloud kitchens, and to starting business outside Lebanon to help our industry inside.
Okay, I mean, as far as I recall, I had one time a dinner in a souk in Qatar that was a North African dish by a North African cook. All the other memories I have, whether it's Jeddah or Dubai or anywhere, Amman, whatever in the region, it always was, where do you get your best food? And then they say, oh, go to the Lebanese restaurant here or there or there. So, and it was not only franchise, but also, of course, the personality people, I mean, the people in person running the small places outside. So, but Anthony, let me ask you, am I correct when I think you are an entrepreneurial mind? And how would you say, what would your advice be to people who want to say today, look, I got a flash, maybe a divine hit over the head or a sudden inspiration, I want to be a food entrepreneur and F&B entrepreneur in Lebanon today. What would you advise them?
I would definitely say go ahead. I mean, for the past years, we've been, all of us operating in Lebanon, you know, crisis after crisis, event after event, we've become masters in solving and moving around problems and keep going forward and making the best out of every situation we're in. The good thing about our industry, casual dining, is that during big crises, usually it gets the least affected and has the quickest comeback, because as human nature, people would like to go out, spend time and go there. So I would definitely advise to go into that industry, as we can see also the potential. As we're speaking now and with what's happening now, we're still receiving interested parties to take on the franchise of our Lebanese concepts into markets that are now emerging, such as Iraq or Libya or Morocco. So even during a worldwide crisis or during what we're facing in Lebanon, there is still and will always be interest in this industry. So definitely it's a go-ahead for such interest.
Thank you. Now, if I look at things in a very journalistic macro way, then I would say over the last round about 50 years, tourism internationally has been on an upward trajectory. Mass tourism, destinations building up Tunisia, building up Turkey, building up Greece in some ways, building up Mallorca. Every second German, I understand, was heading to Mallorca now for the Easter holidays because they opened. That brings back the idea of very large groups of tourists descending on one location. But on the other hand, of course, the global tourism industry has taken its most severe reminder that tourism has to be also something that is sustainable, that is environmental, that is culturally integrated. We cannot just go and drink our beer because it's cheaper in Cyprus than in Edinburgh and then go back for Monday to cure our hangover in Scotland again. All these trends of mass tourism of the past, maybe they will research or maybe they will change forever. What is your expectation, Jumana? How will tourism in this region develop in the next post-5 COVID years?
I think as we've been discussing, there is definitely something we can build on, which is the fact that we have become, as George said, more accessible. So we can build on that. And I think there's a lot of empathy for Lebanon. There's a lot of interest, people in the region, in the world, and Lebanese around the world love Lebanon. So if we build a proper, united campaign that would bring the positive things that are here, that haven't changed, people would come for us, for the people, for the beauty of the scenery, for the great food we have, because we will always have great food. We will always have, this is embedded in us. So I believe we have a big role we can play in, and we have to leverage on that to bring back Lebanon to, on its feet. This is what we can do. We have the chance, quote unquote, of being more accessible, less expensive, and we can build on that with a proper positive image, building on empathy and empathy from everybody, actually. This is what I think we have to bet on.
I love your statement that we will have always great food in Lebanon. It was my worst concern. Will I be exposed to only the mediocre imported materials? But no, I believe that Lebanon will have this cultural DNA and it will not change even by the economic crisis.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But I also loved your statement, George, where you said Lebanon will never be cheap, because we don't want to be cheap. I don't want to be in a cheap country. So, George, tell us what you think can be done in the next 5 years to develop your hospitality in terms of employment? Do we need new schools to train employees? Do we need more digitization? Do we need better marketing campaigns internationally? Do we need a government that actually produces Lebanese representation at international tourism exhibitions and such? What is most realistic given the fact that our government has empty pockets and maybe even empty brains right now?
Well, to start with, we've been used to always capitalizing on our efforts, on the private sector's effort, and not really building on the competencies and the set of skills of our public sector. I think that considering the 5-year span of time that you mentioned, we need to start first by rebuilding what has been destroyed, especially in downtown Beirut, our infrastructure, and in parallel building once again our reputation. And then this is where I started with channeling efforts. We have a beautiful country, we have beautiful people, and then quality, creativity, and innovation is embedded in us. And I echo Jumana on this. I think we need to lead campaigns where to promote the reality, promote the beauty of this country, and then to bring it back to the touristic map, while in parallel rebuilding our infrastructure. Because today, if we try and promote our destination, we don't have even hotels to accommodate people, and we barely have few hotels on the market that are still functional, and then they're facing a challenge. Because as a piece of example today, if you sell your room at $500 at the official exchange rate, which is I would say 750,000 Lebanese pound, if a guest breaks a piece of glass in the room, you cannot replace it anymore. If you want to book a room online, through booking.com, you end up paying the commission that is higher in terms of amount than the revenue of the room. So I think we need to look into redefining our hospitality business model, try to promote the destination, try to promote the innovation, the creativity we have. And honestly, I'm not concerned about creativity and innovation and the quality we can offer. Quality is innate in us, and we always strive for the best. And with the level of resilience we have, it's fantastic. I'm going to give you a very small example. Yesterday, we were on a call with senior leadership in Four Seasons, and they were looking into, trying and support leaders mentally after the COVID-19 period. And then when they arrived to Beirut, they were all laughing. I said, guys, you don't need this in Beirut. You're so resilient to the point that you can bear COVID, the explosion, the economic collapse. And then every time we ask you, how are you? You said, very good, everything's fine. So it is innate in us, we will keep on fighting until we know we stand back on our feet. But it's really, really important that we face what we need to do. We need to rebuild, and then we need to promote. I think that all those professionals is simply, and then how many followers they have on their personal page, instead of promoting negativity, simply promoting something really nice. Yesterday, I've placed on one of my social media platform pages a picture of a jacaranda in downtown Beirut. You will not imagine 1,500 likes on LinkedIn simply because of a picture of a jacaranda in Avenue Foch. You don't see jacaranda in Avenue Foch in the Middle East other than Beirut. So it's very simple, it's beautiful. And then instead of keep on always promoting the negative side, I fully endorse and respect the freedom of speech, but we cannot keep on, I would say, adopting this self-destruction mechanism, because we're all in this together. And then if we don't support each other, we will fall all together. And I don't want to see that, honestly.
Thank you. Now, I want to make my next try to reach out to George, Borhan, and Roman if you have comments on the proceedings so far, if you can give me input. Who of you would like to speak first?
Yes, thank you, Thomas. This is George. I'm not sure if you're able to see me, but very interesting discussions, and thank you, everyone. I think, it's obvious that this sector, the hospitality sector, is the one of the most hit hard by the crisis and by COVID. But as we all know, it's one of the sectors that can rebound very quickly. And it's a big job creator for Lebanon. This is why, from a donor perspective, it has been a sector that is on the radar, on the map, and being supported constantly. And we were even engaging in interesting activities, including digital promotion just before COVID hit. So the question for us now was how to sustain, as everybody said, how to support companies, enterprises, and actors in the sector to sustain activities during this period, but also prepare for relaunching, prepare for the rebound, and have all the ingredients ready to quickly rebound when the situation would allow that. And so this would include also at a later stage rebranding Lebanon and re-promoting Lebanon in the right way, as it has been mentioned by Mr. Ojel and by Mr. Malouf and others. This is probably one of the things needed later on, but also depending on the capacity that would be available in the country. We all know that inbound tourism would be very crucial to sustain the F&B sector and the tourism sector as a whole, including the diaspora. And this will depend, of course, on the stability of the country and the end of COVID. So if those two would be aligned, regardless of the other aspects of the crisis, I think the tourism can rebound, and this can help the whole sector. We just need to be ready and to support. To have all the actors in the ecosystem rebound as quickly as possible and avoid, in the meantime, the brain drain that would not allow that to happen if the situation would continue for a longer time. So this is why, and I will conclude here, USAID has the partnership opportunity open for the actors of the sector and their associations, and including the restaurant associations, so we can invite you to propose your ideas for partnerships where we can put our resources together and bring some donor funding to support initiatives on the short term, on the medium term, and maybe later on also on the longer term.
Thank you, George. One question I have for you. When I read from the report that the USAID TIF project produced on the tourism and hospitality sector in Lebanon, the first sentence that jumps out to me says, during the past 15 years, tourism in Lebanon witnessed irregular growth with many downfall periods. Now, we had, of course, a weakening of tourism in those selective sectors that supplies most of it during different periods because of political interferences in countries that had whatever opinion about Lebanon. We had the interferences related to the Israeli Hezbollah confrontation. We had problems related to global economy. We have seen also some maybe fallout of not only of the COVID pandemic, but also of terrorism in certain years where the whole region of the Middle East was affected. So there were many up and downs in the tourism industry and in the hospitality sector. Would you dare give us a target number, also considering that Lebanon's GDP is considerably contracted now in nominal terms? What kind of share of contribution of to GDP would be good and sustainable to generate by hospitality and tourism?
Thank you, Thomas. I think you probably was addressing this question to me. I think these are the things that need a global thinking by everyone. The GDP in Lebanon has been contracting very much in the last 2 years, and it's expected to keep contracting this year. Big part of the contraction is coming from key sectors, including financial sector and hospitality sector, as well as construction. And maybe the most resilient sectors would be manufacturing and agriculture. But they are not necessarily hugely growing. There are some exports trying to be pushed, but globally speaking, to get back to the hospitality, you know, if it rebounds pretty fast, it can still represent as a percentage a good chunk of the Lebanese GDP in the coming years. It may not be the same numbers as before, because the whole GDP has contracted. I mean, we were talking about 55 billion plus in GDP. It's expected now it will be 18 or even below, depending also on the exchange rate. So it's a huge drop. So even if the percentage of hospitality would be or would become higher in terms of real dollars, it might be less. But again, the baseline is low. In 2000, I mean, now 2021 might be probably one of the lowest baselines. So everything above that would be a gain. Now, how the system will be structured to support a fast growth and a sustainable growth is the whole idea. This is why I think we will share with all the stakeholders the latest analysis that we've done. We mapped the stakeholders, we mapped the chains, we mapped the system, and we put all the numbers that we have in hand, knowing that a lot of the statistics can be missing, particularly in the last 2 years. But with the help of all the stakeholders, I think we can all rebuild this together, put the baseline, and especially put the plans for the future to regain the maximum share and the maximum growth that will support the economy of the country.
So put the baseline and we will rebuild this together are the memorable things or the memes that I take from your intervention, George. Now, to ask, if we are talking about 18 billion in GDP, and if we take the number of past years that were something like around 10% of GDP in direct and indirect contribution of the tourism, and up to 25, depending on which methodology you used, in terms of indirect and induced contribution of the tourism sector. So 10% direct would be 1.8 billion in very simple mental math. So would that be enough for the stakeholders in the F&B and in the hotel industry as a potential incentive to say, let's keep working on it, or do we have to work despite this kind of number? Just give me your final words on that, and give me your, again, Yasser wants to put our action plan. We need to populate the action plan. It doesn't have to be today, but it should be done before we go publish our report in May. So we really beg you to give us projects that we can publicize as potential, and not only publicize, but also develop project plans for, including what Yasser is best at, telling us how to do governance, how to do green, and how to be ESG compliant. So tell me your points.
Yes, definitely. Hospitality and tourism usually constitutes almost 10% of the total GDP. I wasn't aware of that drop from 55 to 18, but this is really drastic. I wouldn't be able to tell if 1.8 or less or more is enough for the whole sector to stay up on its feet or to sustain. We can't even prepare our own profit and loss statements in this current situation. However, all this is still a survival mode. What would make it a long-term recommendation would be definitely to have the private sector take a share in reforms. Without reforms, the whole sector would not be able to survive on the long term. We can survive on franchising for a few years. We can definitely, the influx of fresh money is important for us to stay alive. Yet it's not the long-term solution to create jobs in Lebanon or to keep the great minds of Lebanon in Lebanon. So that's what I would propose.
Yes, I do agree with Maya. I think now it's too early to start looking for solutions. It's a survival mode now. We are downing. We're trying to survive. I think it's too early to make any plans for the future. Surviving now is finding other options to stay in the market. We've been doing consultations and supply, and we've been going around the area. I think we should stay doing that for now, trying to cut down our losses in Lebanon, our expenses, and just wait for the right moment, because I think it's political in the region. We have to wait. We have to see how we can just drop, and where we drop to move again.
Anthony? Would 1.8 billion in GDP share be enough for our industry?
Again, as my colleagues mentioned, I can't verify such a scientific figure. However, any kind of support will help, as Arif said, and everybody knows. Not only we're trying to survive, but it's important that during this phase, that any kind of support that would help us maintain, evolve, develop our businesses in terms of being ready for a good comeback instead of being left behind, that will help as well.
Okay, any last words that you want to add, Anthony, for this round of our discussion?
I'd just like to highlight again on the point you mentioned for newcomers in the field, and being a board member of the Jumana and the Lebanese Franchise Association, we're always, even with those difficult times, and some markets in the region are really booming, such as Egypt and other countries. So I'd like to see more newcomers to the business, to the industry, and even during this phase with all the challenges we're facing, we all mentioned that franchising is a good solution to overcome the current situation, survive, and overpass it as well.
Thank you. George, when we talk about the role of hotels in the tourism industry and how much money would be needed in GDP generation in order to not have to ask the owners to put new capital injections, what number would you favor for our tourism industry to achieve in 2022? Let's forget about this year.
Well, talking about numbers would be eventually speculations. Any influx of funds would lead eventually to creating demand. And once you start creating demand in any sector, this is too much interlinked and interrelated in the economy, and would support, creating and evolving demand for the hospitality, because any company or any sector growing would eventually need accommodation and lodging facilities. And from that moment onward, we start, growing once again, slowly and gradually. Now we're in a situation where we are in the obligation or asking owners to pump money into our bank accounts to restore, because if we look into our business model, a hotel that is damaged would eventually lose more than 60% of the value. We need to restore and then have it functional once again, because this impacts the overall value of the investment. From that moment onward, and then if we start witnessing slow, however steady increase, that would be eventually optimal. Let's put it this way. It will be very optimal. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Maybe the insurance industry will finally get to understand that their responsibility to society also extends to the rapid processing of the claim, but again, the rapid processing of the claims may depend on the assessment. So we have to maybe hope again for the brains in our government that have been emptied by the pressure to actually, and here I emphasize again, if the brains are empty, then it is because they tried so hard to achieve something. What exactly, I'm not sure, but they have been working endlessly, I understand, in the last year to give us a new government. So anyway, with that, I wanted to ask Jumana, how do you see after this round, is there a shwai more hope, or is it a lot more hope?
There's always hope. There's always hope, and as Lebanese, I think we hope is something that pulls us and drives us. So yes, there is hope, but as everybody said, as we're all in this together, we need to pass this moment, this very tough moment we are all facing, in order to rebuild ourselves. And while we're doing that, as Anthony mentioned, use this time to train our teams, to reorganize ourselves, to take this moment as a moment to be ready when things get better. So that's all for the moment.
Okay, thank you. So again, what I hear, maybe it's my ears that are deceiving me, but what I hear is we want to synergize, we want to strategize, we want to plan, we want to reassure each other of our strong points rather than waste our time with moaning about the things we cannot change right now. We have to wait and we have to go forward. Borhan, George, do you have comments in concluding this session? I do not want to run into overtime unless there is anybody who wants to give a 2-hour speech right now. Of course, we will open the floor to all of you. But no, if Borhan, do you have a statement for us?
Yeah, it's not a statement. It's just to say that it's clear that the sector is in survival mode, and then it's seriously being hit every day, and then the latest regulations imposed by COVID are not helping at all. I can understand that. The only comment that I might have is that part of the capital of that you have in your activities is the human capital. And then I'm not talking to the participants around the table, but as a sector, we have noted that there has been a lot of layoffs in recent months, and then it's unfortunately continuing in some places. So we just urge you to consider the human capital in any kind of plan for the future on the short, medium, and long run. Without the Lebanese in your restaurant or hotel, it will never be the same as before, as you can know. Thank you for your participation with this. We're very fortunate that you have been a part of this activity that we as LED and USAID have sponsored. And then we look forward to receiving the recommendations through Executive Magazine. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other last words from the virtual panel?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was very interesting and very insightful.
Thank you so much for being with us. And I understand that you have another session, so I want to give you a few minutes to breathe. But before I do that, I want to ask our friend Yasser to tell us what your final comment is, and especially how we can keep this human capital growing in Lebanon for the hospitality industry.
Of course, I agree with everyone that it's very tough times and it's survival. But at the same time, this time is very precious, all right? Because most of the value that the hospitality industry has been able to create through time is intangible value. Intangible value that is captured in your concepts, in your successful concepts, captured in your processes and procedures, captured, of course, and this should not stop your ambition to expand outside of Lebanon. And this is the beauty of the Lebanese culture, and you belong in the Lebanese heritage culture, if I may say. This should not stop you from making sure that this industry that is purely Lebanese, that has outgrown Lebanon geographically, to remain Lebanese. So I truly believe that we can do a lot during this period, whether in accompanying concepts through maybe documenting or helping them, those who didn't document yet, their processes and procedures, their governance, their concepts, their franchising documents. This is the right time to do it. And this is where we can turn these concepts into a very investable assets, because when we can sell these concepts, and these concepts can be very attractive to foreign direct investment if they are documented right. And I'm sure Arif knows 10 times better than I do, the value is in the document itself. And if this document has proven itself in Lebanon, it is exportable. COVID will release its grip on us, most probably within the coming few months or early 2022. And this will be the right time to go out there, maybe, and seek investors or present to investors in order to invest in these concepts, expansion outside of Lebanon. So I see these synergies, and I see these, this is the perfect time to launch initiatives that allow entrepreneurs that have really invested a lot in the last few years in making sure and validate during which they validated their concepts. This is the right time to accompany them, to help them, creating a platform that we can share experiences that will allow them to really capture. A lot of these concepts don't know the value of their intangible asset. Maybe it's the right time to help them document and understand the value of these intangible assets and be a part of their expansion outside of Lebanon. So it's yes, it's a desolate situation, and yes, Lebanon to go to regain its strength from 18 billion to 55 billion and hopefully more will take much more than it takes really a lot of geopolitics, which is really beyond asking from anyone, any market participant in Lebanon. It's a huge pressure on Lebanon that we are paying again the price of regional and international tugs of war, as we've put it in my editorial last month. So the idea is there is a lot to be done to help the industry in documenting and preserving the value that they worked so hard to build. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Yasser, and thank you for this very interesting thought that documentation of very careful and concise documentation of concepts will actually increase the intangible value and the marketability and the asset quality of what we have in Lebanon, and that this is the right time to start this. So now, before I start singing, if I can make it here, I can make it anywhere. Please, thank you so much, and I wish you a nice afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.